The desert was cruel, and so was the world that had turned its back on her. Her name was Gnarly, born to the proud Chiricahua Apache, and she was running for her life. The wide New Mexico skies stretched above her like a blistering dome, and her bare feet slapped the cracked earth as blood trailed behind. Her breath came in short, pained gasps. Her long black hair stuck to her sweat-covered neck, and behind her, hooves thundered. Men shouted, laughter like wolves chasing a dying doe. She had become prey. 3 white bounty hunters were tracking her, men who knew the land and carried rifles they didn't deserve. Their orders were clear: capture the escaped squaw, dead or alive. A higher price if she was brought in breathing. Someone in Fort Allen wanted her returned, not because she was guilty, but because her survival embarrassed them. The raid on her village had been meant to erase them all. No witnesses, no resistance. But Gnarly had resisted. She'd stabbed a soldier who tried to force her into the back of a supply wagon. She slit his throat with her grandfather's knife and vanished into the night. Since then, she'd been hunted like a coyote. Her lungs screamed as she scrambled up a rocky hill. Thorns sliced at her legs. Sharp stones tore at her soles. Every breath she took was thick with dust. She paused near a cluster of boulders, collapsed to one knee, and scanned her surroundings. The arid land stretched for miles. No water, no trees, just scorching sun and death waiting quietly behind every ridge. She ducked into a narrow ravine, hiding beneath a shelf of rock. Her heart pounded so violently she could feel it in her throat. Think, Gnarly. Think like the wolf. She pressed herself against the dirt, her skin blending into the earth, her breath slow and shallow. She tightened her grip on the obsidian blade strapped to her thigh. Footsteps crunched above. "She went this way," one of the men called out. "Look for blood. She's leaking like a butchered calf." Another one laughed. "Hope she ain't dead yet. I got plans for her before we turn her in." A surge of cold rage gripped Gnarly's gut. These weren't men. They were scavengers in boots, feeding off fear. Then came silence. Minutes passed. The sun moved a little farther across the sky. And just when she thought she might survive, a boot landed above her. She was about to leap, knife ready. Crack! A rifle shot rang out from above. A bird scattered from a nearby bush. Then came a calm, commanding voice. "That's far enough." The boot froze. "You don't want to make your next step your last." 3 bounty hunters looked up and saw a lone cowboy sitting steady on a chestnut-colored horse, rifle aimed directly at them. Dust blew gently around his duster coat, and his wide-brimmed hat shaded a hard, sun-worn face. His name was Colt McAllister, a former Union soldier turned rancher who had once killed for orders, but now carried a rifle only for justice. One of the hunters spat. "You got no idea what this is about, cowboy. Walk away." Colt didn't move. "I know enough. She's not a bounty. She's a human being." "She killed a man," another hissed. Colt cocked the rifle. Then maybe he had it coming. "Last warning, friend." Colt's eyes narrowed. "So's this." He fired again, not at them, but at a rock just inches from their feet. The shot cracked so close it rattled the bones of every man there. The bounty hunters exchanged glances. They weren't brave, just cruel. Cruelty runs fast, but not deep. They turned their horses and rode off, grumbling curses into the wind. When silence fell again, Colt remained on his horse for a few moments longer, scanning the hills. Then he lowered the rifle and dismounted. "You can come out now," he called gently. From beneath the rocks, Gnarly rose like a spirit returning from the dead. Her face was dirt-streaked, her legs bruised and cut, but her eyes were sharp. She held the knife tight, trembling not from fear, but exhaustion. He raised both hands. "I ain't your enemy." She didn't speak, she didn't trust him. And why should she? The last white man she trusted had ordered the burning of her village. He took a slow step forward, removed a canteen from his belt, and placed it on the ground between them. "You're hurt. You need water and rest." Still, she said nothing. Colt looked at her with quiet patience. "I'm Colt. Colt McAllister, just a rancher. You don't owe me nothing, but I ain't gonna leave you here to die." Gnarly glanced at the canteen. She was parched, her throat like sandpaper, but pride held her in place. Pride and survival. Apache warriors didn't take kindness from strangers. Then her knees buckled. Colt rushed forward and caught her before she hit the ground. She fought him weakly, struggling to stand to keep her dignity. "Easy," he said, steadying her. "You're safe now." Her vision blurred. The last thing she saw was the concern in his eyes. Then darkness took her. She awoke to warmth. Soft firelight flickered against wooden walls. The scent of pine, old leather, and stew filled the air. Norley sat up suddenly, her knife hand reaching instinctively, but the weapon was beside her, untouched. She was in a small cabin, wrapped in a thick wool blanket. Her wounds were clean, bandaged. Someone had scrubbed the dirt from her skin. The door creaked open. Colt stepped in, carrying a small tin plate and a calm expression. "You're awake," he said softly. She stared at him. "I made stew. Figured you'd be hungry. You've been out for nearly a day." He placed the plate on a nearby stool and sat by the fire. Norley watched him closely, every movement, every breath. But he didn't stare at her, didn't ask questions, didn't touch her, just poked the fire, waiting like he'd done it 1,000 times. "You can leave when you're strong enough," he finally said. "No one's going to stop you, but those men, they'll come back. If they find you alone, they won't be kind." She didn't respond. He sighed. "I don't expect you to trust me. Hell, if our roles were reversed, I wouldn't trust me either. But you saved your life already. I just made sure you kept it." Silence filled the room again. Then Nali spoke for the first time. "Why?" Colt looked up. "Why'd you help me?" she asked, voice hoarse but steady. He stared into the fire. "'Cause I've seen good people hunted, done nothing too many times. I can't fix the past, but I can damn well stand in the way of men like them." She studied him, no lies in his tone, no pity either, just a man tired of looking the other way. She picked up the stew, tasted it carefully, her stomach twisted with hunger. As she ate, Colt stood. "I'll sleep in the barn, doors unlocked, firewood stacked near the back, and I left your knife right where it was." He turned and stepped out into the cool night air. Nali looked down at her hands, at the food, at the knife. She was still hunted, still afraid, but for the first time in many days, she didn't feel alone. The fire crackled in the old stone hearth, casting long shadows across the cabin walls. Nali sat quietly in the corner, her legs wrapped in fresh bandages, her obsidian knife now resting on her lap, not clenched in fear, but resting with ease. She had slept through the night without waking in terror, something she hadn't done since her village burned. Colt returned early in the morning with supplies, more beans, flour, and a bolt of cloth. He didn't speak much, didn't ask questions. He worked the land, fixed a broken fence, fed his horse, and left a steaming cup of coffee near her side, without expecting a word in return. But something was changing. Nali had seen many kinds of men, cruel soldiers, greedy merchants, traitors in the skin of friends. Colt wasn't like them. He had no desire to control her, no guilt tricks. He never looked at her like she was helpless or dangerous, just human. That unsettled her even more. She was a survivor of a people no one wanted to survive, and this cowboy, with quiet hands and tired eyes, had given her space when the whole world wanted her erased. By the third morning, she spoke first. "How long will they look for me?" Colt set down his tools and walked to the porch. "Depends. Word's out in town you escaped. Fort Allen's setting a reward. They've painted you as a savage killer." "I killed no one who didn't try to take my life," she said sharply. "I believe you. But the law won't." He nodded. "That ain't justice, that's politics." She stared at him. "Then why keep me here? You could be branded a traitor." Colt looked up at the sunrise. "Maybe I'm tired of obeying cowards in uniform." That evening, they sat side by side for the first time, not as stranger and fugitive, but as two broken souls sharing warmth under a silent sky. But peace doesn't last long in the West. A week later, a dust trail appeared over the ridge. 2 riders at first, then 5. The bounty hunters were back, and this time they brought soldiers. Colt spotted them through his telescope. "They've come to finish it." Nali stood up. "Then I leave. I won't let you pay for saving me." But Colt shook his head. "No, I'll ride out and lead them off. You head north. Take my horse. There's a Lakota camp 2 days from here. Tell them you're friend of Colt McAllister. They'll help." She hesitated, fire in her eyes. "You'd sacrifice yourself for me." "I ain't sacrificing," he replied. "I'm choosing. There's a difference." She looked at him a long time, then took his hand, rough, warm, scarred by war, but steady. He mounted his second horse, a faster roan mare, and tipped his hat. "Ride smart, Apache. And you, ride safe, Cowboy." Colt raced across the hills, kicking up dust, drawing the eyes of the soldiers like a ghost in a storm. He led them through winding canyons, doubling back with expert ease, turning the chase into a dance of bullets and wind. He fired warning shots, never to kill, but to slow them, remind them that the man they pursued knew these lands better than any officer fresh out of Washington. Meanwhile, Gnarly took his trail north. She passed through hidden deer paths, followed dry riverbeds only the ancestors would remember. Her knife stayed close, but no man followed her. By the time she reached the Lakota camp, her body was weak, but her heart was strong. An elder stepped forward, recognizing her bloodline in her face. "Your father once gave me water when I was dying. Today, I return that honor." They gave her shelter, food, and news. Colt had been captured. 3 days passed. Gnarly didn't sleep. The U.S. Army was holding Colt in a wooden cell near the edge of town. Rumors swirled. Some said he'd be hanged for treason. Others whispered he'd be sent east for trial. None of them cared for truth. Colt had stood up for a native woman. That made him guilty in their eyes. Gnarly watched the outpost from a ridge above. 1 guard on the east wall, 2 on the west. A supply wagon came every morning. On the 4th night, she painted her face in ash and stepped into the dark. She moved like mist, swift and silent, crawling under fences and through gaps in the wall. She reached the cell without a sound. The Colt was lying on the floor, bruised but alive. He blinked when he saw her. "You came back." She picked the lock with a thin bone tool from her braid. "I don't leave behind those who fought beside me." He smiled faintly. "Now I believe you're Apache." They escaped into the hills, but the soldiers followed like wolves. By the 2nd day, their horses were gone, spooked and scattered in the dark. They ran, together, side by side, through cactus and dust, through gunfire and thunder, until they reached the cliffs above the sacred canyons. No path forward, 100-foot drop, and behind them voices. Gnarly turned to face the oncoming army. Colt looked at her. "We jump." Her eyes widened. "Are you mad?" "They'll kill us either way. Water's deep down there, might just live to see another sunrise." They clasped hands and jumped. The river swallowed them in cold silence. They surfaced gasping, alive but battered. The current carried them downstream through narrow walls of red rock, and when they crawled out, shivering but breathing, the soldiers were long gone. They lay in the mud, staring at the sky. And Gnarly laughed. Colt coughed beside her. "Wasn't that funny?" "No," she said, still smiling. "It was freedom." Weeks passed. The world forgot them. Fort Allen turned its attention to new enemies. The bounty was withdrawn quietly, replaced with silence. In the far northern hills, near a valley untouched by railroads and greed, a new home was built. Small, honest, shared. Colt planted beans, traded furs, and rebuilt what war had taken from him. Gnarly hunted rabbits, grew corn, and sang to the stars once again. Their scars didn't vanish, the past didn't disappear, but together they made peace with it. He, the cowboy who once followed orders. She, the Apache woman who refused to die. And neither one of them was hunted anymore.